What if the person telling you that China's system might be better than America's wasn't Chinese at all? What if it came from someone who once stood at the very top of the American financial world? A man who led Goldman Sachs, one of the most powerful institutions on Wall Street? Meet John L. Thornton, a name not widely known by the public, but behind closed doors, he's one of the most influential bridges between China and the United States. Once the president of Goldman Sachs, Thornton walked away from the fast lane of Wall Street and stepped into something far more complex: understanding China. He didn't just study it. He moved there, became a professor at Tsinghua University, often called the MIT of China, and built relationships at the very top of China's political system. At the same time, he remained deeply rooted in the US, chairing the prestigious Brookings Institution. So, when Thornton says that China's system may actually work better, in some ways, than America's, you listen. But what exactly does he mean by that? Is it just about faster trains or taller buildings? Or is there something deeper? A different way of thinking about government, progress, and the future. Today, we explore why John L. Thornton believes the Chinese system holds powerful advantages, and why his message challenges everything we think we know. Stick around, because what you'll hear next may just change how you view global power and how you see your own country. In the United States, passing a bill can feel like dragging a boulder uphill through sand in a thunderstorm. Every policy is debated, filibustered, blocked, amended, and then debated again. Sometimes it takes years to pass a law, other times it just dies in gridlock. Now compare that to China. When the Chinese government sets a goal, like building a high-speed rail system or transforming an entire region into a tech hub, it gets done. Not in decades, in months, or a few short years. But here's the twist. This speed doesn't come from chaos. It comes from control. And that's what Thornton wants us to understand. The Chinese political system is not a democracy, but it is highly meritocratic, Thornton often says. He describes it as a system where leaders are trained, tested, and promoted through layers of governance, often over decades. Officials aren't elected by popular vote. They're evaluated on performance. You might be skeptical. How can a system without elections be more efficient or even more accountable? Thornton points to China's 5-year plans, detailed blueprints created and executed with precision. These plans drive development at every level, from villages to megacities. Once a direction is set, there's little interference from political opposition, because there isn't any. In contrast, American leaders often face short-term pressure. With 2-year election cycles, the focus tends to be on winning votes, not solving long-term problems. The American system is noisy, Thornton says. That messiness has a cost. Infrastructure collapses, healthcare remains fragmented, and major reforms stall for decades. Thornton isn't saying China's system is morally superior, but that it's designed to act, not argue. Here's a real-world example. During the COVID-19 pandemic, China locked down entire cities in days. Hospitals were built overnight. Meanwhile, the US response was mired in political division. Now, is one system more free? Arguably, no. But is one system more effective in certain areas? That's the uncomfortable question Thornton wants Americans to ask. Not just with suspicion, but with openness. Can a system without constant elections, but with long-term discipline and execution, sometimes outperform liberal democracies? It's not a simple answer. But Thornton believes that refusing to even ask the question is a mistake. Because in this century, power might not belong to the loudest. It might belong to the most focused. Imagine boarding a train in Beijing. 2 hours later, you're 800 miles away, sipping tea in Shanghai. No flight, no traffic, just speed, silence, and efficiency. That's not science fiction. That's China's high-speed rail network, the largest and fastest in the world. Over 40,000 kilometers and growing. Now try booking a train from New York to Chicago. Good luck. As Thornton explains, you cannot understand China's system until you see what it can build. For Thornton, infrastructure isn't just about convenience. It's proof of execution. In a system where decisions are made fast and vertically, massive projects don't get stuck in zoning battles, lawsuits, or political infighting. They get the green light, they keki, and they go. Take Xiong'an New Area, a city the government announced in 2017 to relieve pressure from Beijing. Just a few years later, roads, bridges, housing, tech hubs, already operational. Compare that with the US, where California's high-speed rail, announced in 2008, is still years from completion, riddled with budget overruns and lawsuits. So, is this just about who can build faster? Not exactly. Thornton points to something deeper, a long-term mindset. China builds for decades ahead, not election cycles. Planners think in terms of 20, 30, even 50 years. And once a plan is set, it's pursued with consistency that's almost unheard of in the West. Meanwhile, in the US, a highway project might start under one administration and get canceled under the next. This doesn't mean China is perfect. Thornton doesn't claim that. There are mistakes, and sometimes bold plans go too far. But what China avoids through centralized coordination is the death of vision by indecision. They think big, he says, and more importantly, they do big. To Thornton, infrastructure is a mirror reflecting a nation's priorities. In China, it reflects cohesion, ambition, and control. In America, it often reflects division, delay, and dysfunction. And for a businessman who spent decades analyzing returns, Thornton sees China's model delivering results at scale. The real question isn't who builds taller skyscrapers, it's who builds the future faster. What if the secret to economic power wasn't ideology, but pragmatism? In China, economic decisions aren't debated on cable news or Twitter. They're planned, tested, and scaled with a quiet efficiency that often baffles the West. In China, they don't care if it's labeled capitalist or socialist. If it works, they use it. That's right. Despite being ruled by the Communist Party, China embraces free markets, private enterprise, and global investment when it suits the national agenda. Now contrast that with the US. Every few years, the American economy changes direction. Tax cuts get reversed. Trade deals are torn up. Regulations swing wildly depending on who wins an election. It's noisy, it's democratic, but it's also unstable. Thornton argues that China's strength lies in its consistency. It follows multi-decade plans. It sets clear economic targets. And most importantly, it allows for flexibility within a stable framework. Take Shenzhen, for example, once a fishing village, now a global tech capital. Why? Because the Chinese government designated it as a special economic zone, gave it autonomy, and let it grow under market forces. But here's the twist. Thornton doesn't praise China for being more free. He praises it for being strategically adaptable, stating that they're not locked into dogma. In the US, by contrast, economic policy is often ideological warfare, stimulus or austerity, regulation or deregulation, red or blue. That's the cost of democracy. And Thornton isn't calling for America to abandon it, but he is warning, dogma kills momentum. While Washington argues over budget ceilings, Beijing funds AI research, EV infrastructure, and digital currency pilots. Their model rewards long-term thinking, Thornton observes. Ours rewards short-term victories. Now, here's the paradox. In the land of free markets, political gridlock often stifles them. In a one-party state, markets sometimes flourish because of centralized control. It's a strange reversal, but one that Thornton says Americans need to confront honestly. Because in the 21st century, economic power won't come from who yells louder. It'll come from who adapts faster and plans smarter. How does a country prepare for the future? Some build missiles, others build mines. China is doing both. But it's the second part that really caught John L. Thornton's attention. After leaving Goldman Sachs, he didn't retire. He moved to Beijing. Why? To teach at Tsinghua University, China's top school, and a training ground for its future leaders. He didn't just lecture. He helped design programs to develop the next generation of global thinkers. His mission was clear: bridge East and West through education. China invests in people, Thornton says, in talent, in research, in leadership. It's not just rhetoric. China now graduates more STEM students than the US and Europe combined. It has poured billions into universities, research labs, and international collaborations. Meanwhile, in the US, college has become a debt trap. Tuition costs soar, student loans cripple millions, and educational outcomes are wildly unequal. Here's the twist. Chinese students still flock to the US for world-class universities. But the trend is shifting. More are staying home or returning quickly. Why? Because China now offers competitive careers, world-class labs, and a sense of national mission. Thornton helped create initiatives like the Global Leadership Program, blending Western business education with Chinese strategic thinking. His idea wasn't to replace the American model, but to learn from both. We should be trading ideas as well as goods, he says. But are we? In the US, educational policy is tangled in political fights, from curriculum bans to culture wars. In China, it's focused on output, discipline, and global competition. Critics say it's rigid. Thornton says it's focused. This isn't just about test scores. It's about who's shaping the minds of tomorrow's innovators, diplomats, and CEOs. Thornton sees China training leaders with vision, while the US struggles to agree on what leadership even looks like. So here's the real question. In a knowledge economy, who wins? The country that argues about education or the one that builds it into its national strategy? While America debates its place in the world, China is quietly redefining it. Not through war or through tweets, but through roads, ports, tech, and influence. It's called the Belt and Road Initiative, a $1 trillion global infrastructure project connecting over 140 countries. It spans Asia, Africa, Europe, and beyond. It's more than concrete and cables. It's China's way of writing the rules of the next century. They're exporting not just products, but their model. That model: long-term deals, strategic patience, and a deep belief in state-guided growth. Meanwhile, the US relies on what it's always had: soft power, Hollywood, Harvard, the dollar, democracy. For decades, this worked. American culture and ideals dominated the global conversation. But today, countries are looking east, not just for trade, but for partnerships. China offers them roads, loans, and new alliances. With fewer lectures on human rights or internal politics. Is that dangerous? Possibly. Is it working? Absolutely. Thornton sees this shift clearly. China isn't trying to be the next America, he says. It's trying to be China, with global reach. Its model appeals to developing nations. No messy elections, no partisan paralysis, just results. Schools, jobs, infrastructure, delivered fast. And here's the part many Americans miss. While Washington focuses on short-term headlines, Beijing is playing a 50-year game. They open universities for African students. They fund think tanks in Europe. They build apps, media outlets, and digital payment systems across Asia. Soft power, Chinese style, strategic, subtle, and scalable. Now compare that to US foreign policy in recent years. Trade wars, withdrawal from global accords, tumbling trust. Thornton doesn't say China is flawless, but he warns that underestimating its influence is America's biggest mistake. And in a world desperate for development and infrastructure, China is offering something the US hasn't: an alternative. So, ask yourself, is power in the 21st century still about military bases and moral lectures? Or is it about building railways, data centers, alliances? Thornton believes that while America talks about leading, China is already leading, in ways most people don't even notice. So, is China's system really better than America's? That's the wrong question, according to John L. Thornton. The better question is, what can we learn? Over the past 20 years, Thornton has sat in the boardrooms of Wall Street and the policy halls of Beijing. He's seen both systems, from the inside. And his conclusion isn't about winners or losers. It's about blind spots. The US prides itself on freedom, innovation, and the power of the individual. But that same freedom can paralyze progress when politics turn toxic. China operates with control, efficiency, and long-term vision. But that control comes with trade-offs: censorship, surveillance, and suppression of dissent. Thornton isn't asking Americans to admire authoritarianism. He's asking them to recognize excellence even when it comes from a rival. If we refuse to see what China does well, he warns, we will fall behind. China is not trying to be a better America. It's trying to be the best China it can be. And it's succeeding in many ways the West never expected. Thornton believes we're entering a new era, not of American decline, but of global balance. A world where more than one system can thrive. A world where power comes not just from democracy or dominance, but from competence. So what should America do? Learn, adapt, invest in infrastructure, in education, in strategic vision. Thornton's message is simple, but profound. Respect your rival. Learn from their strengths, and never stop improving your own. Because this century won't be won by ideology. It'll be won by those who can build, who can think, and who can act with purpose.